Welcome to the Sales Dojo podcast. The podcasts are here to help you address the real issues salespeople face every single day.
Just me and you today, Susie.
It is. Just the two of us. Oh, there's a song about that, isn't there? I won't sing it.
No, please do, sing it.
No, I will not do that. Otherwise, we'll have nobody listening to this episode.
Is the next line making castles in the sky?
It is.
Okay, cool. I just wonder, because I make up lots of words to songs, and that could have easily been one of them. Like, Frankie always takes a mick about me saying that Trombolese one, when it's strong beliefs.
You what?
My lover's got no money, he's got his Trombolese. So she's like, what's a Trombolese? Anyway, we're not here to talk about music.
Sadly not. Well, no, actually, I'm more happy that we're talking about sales.
Yes, I am. Should we do just that then?
Let's.
Cool. So first post is one that you found and is from Joanna Hinch.
It is, yeah. And it got my attention, Joanna, because it starts with, I adopted the belief that great salespeople can sell ice to Eskimos. And I'm just going to stop there for a moment because it got my attention because I've been thinking about this a lot recently. Is it to sell ice to Eskimos? Is it to sell sand to the Arabs? I'm trying to think of all the other analogies there are about being a good salesperson. But I thought it was really interesting. So it got my attention, Joanna. And she said, and I wanted to be great. So I decided I was going to prove I could sell to anyone. Spoiler, Eskimos don't need ice. So why spend hours trying to convince someone who was never likely to buy when there are people already looking for what you sell? So this is her argument. Theoretically spoken, you could close 3 deals in the same hour. You're trying to drag one uninterested prospect over the line. That's time allocation. She says, I tried to turn every no into a yes. Objection handled the life out of every conversation. Every call turned into something I had to win. I wasn't selling, I was proving, and it drained me. So don't get me wrong, I still believe in cold calling. I just don't believe in convincing people who don't have a problem or need. The buyer decides always what they buy, when they buy, how they buy, through which channel they buy. If they don't feel the pain, see the gap, or have the priority, you can't manufacture it. So that's just an interesting post, and it does go on a bit longer than that, but I think that's enough to get the gist. First of all, I just wanted to ask you, Leon, sand to Arabs, ice to Eskimos, do you associate that with someone who's a good salesperson?
No, I associate with the kind of things that people used to say to me years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They would say 3 things. You've got the gift of the gab.
Mm-hmm.
You could sell ice to the Eskimos.
And you took those compliments back then?
Did you? No, I kind of got a bit embarrassed when people said it, if I remember rightly, and I don't like people saying nice things about me to my face, do I? I like them to say that. But I can remember people saying it a lot, like gift of the gab. And if I meet people from school or I meet people from when I was younger or any of that kind of stuff, and they ask what you're doing, and I'm saying I'm in sales, they would do that. I knew you'd be in sales because you're a good talker. Which is mad, isn't it? Because
it is
pretty much the opposite of what you need to do.
Exactly, it is. And I think that's
that as well, Susie. Did it used to be the case? Years ago, did having good chat mean you had an advantage, or were people just misconstruing that as being an outgoing personality, which again is not a prerequisite for being a good seller?
I reckon there was a little bit of it going on, wasn't there? Because if you think about the door-to-door salespeople and the patter that they learn, it was often quite similar. And there was a certain routine that they took you through, or double glazing salespeople and things like that. And it was certainly a technique to get people to buy. But it wasn't just talking, was it? It was a combination of thought through questions or leading questions to get the customer or the potential customer to say something, and then bam, hit them with that close that they then somehow can't say no to. I don't know. It's a difficult one.
I certainly would have spoke a lot more when I first started in sales 27 years ago, because at that point my job was to educate. So I mean, I'm that old that Google wasn't around when I first started selling. So, you were an information hub. You were someone who did a lot of educating at that point. So, like, if I just think about what I do when I've done for 27 years, which is selling telecoms, I did lots of telling people about the features of advantages and benefits of GPRS and pixels on a screen and all that kind of stuff. And I had to do a lot of educating. I honestly do not talk about my product anymore.
Because everybody's so well informed.
Yeah, I mean, customers are telling me what's on the new iPhone. And I'm like, shit, that's good.
So it has changed. And I think we've got a post later on that we're talking about kind of doing your research about, aren't we? But let's stick to selling ice to Eskimos. And by the way, I've just realized that probably there's two not politically correct terminologies in there. So apologies if we're using the wrong terminology. We're reading a post that somebody else has written. But I really get what Joanna's saying here, which is if you are trying to prove something in every single sales call you're doing, you're trying to win, and it's the winning that is making you go on rather than, am I helping this customer? Am I matching a need to a product or a service or a solution that I've got? Then I think we're in tricky waters, because depending on what you're selling, you could be creating a massive problem for either yourself or your customer service team down the road, right? So we used to sell repair data to workshops, and we ended up having to introduce a negative part to the bonus payout. So basically, they would buy a 12-month contract, but if a customer left their contract earlier than the first 12 months, then that bonus would be taken back off the rep, prorated according to how many months that customer had paid for, to really avoid reps pushing a product that somebody didn't need or was going to not want, because it caused a heck of a lot of time and effort later down the line. So I know I'm kind of springing to solutions here as to how we can fix this. But Leon, like, what are you thinking about this? Like, do you know people who sell for the win and that they don't care if the customer needs it or not?
Well, I know that I've done that before. I know that when I first started in sales, I was trained and pressured and bonused and rewards into thinking that my job was to go out there and get loads of people to say yes. And, I remember as the first time I was a sales manager, I would not reprimand, but I would almost tell people off for leaving a meeting without getting a yes or phoning me and stuff like that. So I know that it's happened in the past. Look, as I said to you, people say this a lot to me. If I have conversations with people around this kind of thing, and they say that they get nervous or they feel imposter syndrome or whatever, or they feel the ick when they're doing sale, the conversation I'll always have with them is around this thing of not trying to get people to say yes, but trying to get dead good at getting people to make a decision.
Yeah.
And if you can get dead good at that, you just then need to work on your metrics at the top, which is how many cold calls you're making, how many sits are you having, how many meetings are you setting up, all that kind of stuff. Because once you get good at this, getting people to make a decision, it does two things. One, it stops you feeling the ick about whether or not you've won or lost in an opportunity, because you have won every time if you got them to decide, even if it's no. And two, frees up so much time from chasing someone who wanted to say no but was dead nice and therefore didn't want to let you down. So just keep telling you they'll think about it and phone them back in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. That's an interesting one. Do you know, my mind is springing. I apologize. I've just got off a one day of a 2-day training, and we've just covered questioning, and not just like ask open questions and don't ask closed questions, which is actually not entirely true. Of course, we can ask closed questions when they're fitting, but more about like, how do we start to ask questions that get the customer to realize themselves that what their standpoint is not necessarily their true standpoint. Now, what I'm talking about here is not convincing them and changing their mind away from something that they think, not that, which is what Joanna's talking about here, but actually, how do we really check if the customer is really aware of the impact or the pain or whatever it might be? And I'm just looking on the board, which none of you can see, but it's in front of me now, of some of the strong questions that people have asked, or we're trying to think about. It's like, let's imagine you do nothing about this particular point. What happens in a year's time and things like that? And I don't believe that's convincing someone that they've got a problem. It's asking them a question and seeing what comes out. And then you can start to gauge whether they are prospect, a suspect, as I like you to call them, not interested, whatever it might be. And I'm just thinking aloud with you now, Leon, like, to what Joanna's point was about this convincing. I don't think convincing's the wrong word, but it's digging to really make sure that the prospect or the customer doesn't have an issue.
Yeah, look,
really, truly.
When we talk about it, like when I said at the start of this conversation that 27 years ago, my job was an educator.
Yeah.
And it moved from that to being someone who helped to try and help people find problems. You'd have to try and have conversations. And it's changed again in that you need to get now people to both understand the problem and then see the challenge that they're going to face if they don't do something about it. So like, we're doing all of this work for buyers now where we've got to really take them on that journey and really ask the right conversations. But the key thing with this is, like, and Chris always has a really nice line, was that people believe their own data, that you can't get someone to believe something that they don't think is true.
Yeah.
Unless they make a decision to go, okay, I've now decided that's something that I think. You can't say, oh, you're wrong, because you become in a position of conflict then, don't you?
Yeah.
Like, how's that working out for you is a classic line that I'll use when I'm coaching someone personally. And it helps them to realize, because you both smile when you ask it, because it's like, yeah, busy doing this. You go, how's that working out for you? And they go, oh, yeah, it isn't working out that well. But you can't say that to a prospect. If they say, it's maybe not going as well as hoped, and you go, how's that working out for you? Then they think, you're a dick. Get out of my office. I don't want to have a conversation with you. So it's got to be more gentle, slowly catch that monkey than, as forceful as you would in a coaching scenario, I guess.
Yeah, you're true. It's true. Although I would say you could ask that question. I think you just form that question differently if you were in a professional setting. Like, you wouldn't go, and how's that working out for you with a wry smile? You'd say something like, and what's your experience been so far?
Yeah.
Right. It's the same question. You're just asking it a bit more professionally, maybe a bit less provocative.
100%. And you kind of want to get to that position, but there's loads of things that you can do. I was having a chat with someone today and talking about how you do this, and if people have got an existing or an incumbent supplier, and I said, what do you do when you get to that situation? They say, oh yeah, I just basically finish with that prospect and move on. I'm going, okay, well, tell me some more about that. And they were saying, if they say that they've got one, they just thank them very much for the time and then move on to the next call. I was like, well, have you asked them anything about their existing supplier? If you're 45, 60, 2 minutes into a conversation as a not their existing supplier, you've probably got at least a 1 out of 10 that you can have a conversation around, because if they were 10 out of 10, absolutely never leave and never have any problems with my current supplier, you wouldn't have got any biscuit whatsoever. So yeah, you've got to develop. Look, you've got to have a series, not a series. That's the wrong turn of phrase, because a series of questions sounds like you ask them in order to get what you want. But you must have a toolbox of questions that you can turn to that will help you to uncover and dig into whatever the challenge is, until you get to a point where either you realize that there's nowhere to move on this, or they realize that maybe they've got an angle that they could do something else.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Before we move off this one, I did a quick Google search because at the start you were searching for other, I think they're called idioms, are they? Which is the similar.
Yeah.
So there's lots on Reddit which I can't share, which I'm not going to, but which I can. One of them is you could sell honey to a bee, which obviously I love.
Oh yeah, of course you would.
One of them was selling a Christmas tea in January, which I kind of like as well, but I'm not sure if I'm 100% of that. One of them says selling condoms to a nun, which I'm not going to repeat on a radio show or a podcast. is appropriate. The best one that I found was, I'm guessing this is an American person who's put this in, and you'll understand why I say that when I say it. It says he could sell a ketchup popsicle to a woman in white gloves.
Okay.
Yeah, and when I wouldn't have mentioned that other than the fact that I did a few searches and that showed up in many searches. So I'm guessing it is a common cultural thing that people in the US might say about what they do.
Okay. I'm not going to change. I'm not going to take that one on. But anyways,
Should we do another post then?
Let's do that. Let's moving on swiftly. I was talking about doing your research, wasn't I, in that last post as well? Like, actually, the customer doing their research. And this is an interesting post from Jen Allen Knut. I always do it with the German accent. It's probably Knuth. So, hey, Jen, we love talking about your posts, especially love your dog posts on a weekend. Jen always takes it upon herself to promote a dog that needs a good home in the US. So, if you're not following her, for business reasons, follow her for those reasons because she put some cuties up there. Anyway, this is a business post that Jen's put up and it reads like this. Imagine you get on a discovery call and the prospect says, before we start, I want you to tell me what you already know about our business objectives, what we do and who we compete against. This rarely happens, but it happened to Jen once. She had pages. She said, I had pages of call prep, but couldn't give them simple, clear answers to their questions. So they ended the call right after lecturing me on the value of their time, rightfully so. Now, every time I prepare for a call, I imagine the prospect putting me on the spot like that again. Most prospects are too nice to do it, but many of them think it. It's obvious how prepared we are by the questions we ask, by the way we tee up the call. Preparation is one of the few competitive advantages within our control, and it's never been easier to do discovery before because of AI. Here's one of the prompts that she runs before every discovery call. I love a good prompt. So here we go. This is the prompt. I work for company. Who is the CEO of account? And what are their most recent interviews or comments regarding the company's 2026 strategic business objectives? Look for strategic objectives that speak to increasing revenue, reducing risk, reducing costs, and increasing productivity. Please include why they're likely focused on these objectives and what metrics they'll use to measure success. Woo! Love a prompt. So I just thought this was really pretty cool. As a suggestion, we love tips on the Sales Dojo podcast, and this seems to be a really good one for me. Is use that. You've got a really quick output as to what you could have in front of you if you are preparing for that discovery call. I do something similar, actually. Leon, do you do any AI prep when you're calling a new prospect?
So if I'm cold calling, not when I'm making phone calls, I'm a firm believer in doing the discovery and finding out, doing your research on the phone. Because two reasons. One, if you spend 4 minutes before every call, then in 60 minutes, you'd only make 1/20th of the number of calls that you might have made if you just made some calls. And sales isn't a numbers game, but prospecting definitely is a numbers game. But two, the other reason why I don't do much in the way of it before is you don't always speak to the right person when you do it. So you've probably got a chance to call back and they probably won't remember if you did anyway, you know, if you phone them at the wrong time and stuff like that. So for me, with the cold call and stuff, I don't, because you've got chances to do something else which won't leave you with a black mark, if you know what I mean. Now, if you were sending DMs and then you send a DM and send a DM and send a DM, that leaves a trace and a record. Whereas I just think phone calling doesn't. However, I definitely do it before a meeting.
Okay. So this style of meeting that Jen's talking about here, like a first discovery or a, hey, I like what you're talking about. Let's set up a meeting so you can tell me more in detail.
Yeah, again, to clarify, my process would be phone to get an in-person meeting.
Okay.
I'm in the UK. It's a lot smaller. We focus all of our outreach on northwest or north of England based stuff. So there's not really, you know, it's not like we're in the US and I'm phoning from Tampa, Florida, and trying to get a meeting with someone in New York, and it's going to take me a couple of days travel. It's slightly different, but yeah, I certainly do before the meeting.
Yeah. So I think this is a really cool prompt, and I think it's really valid. I meet with a lot of prospects as well who are wanting to meet me because they want to figure out if I would be the right trainer for their company. And I don't know. Somebody else has done the selling. So I work as a subcontractor for certain companies, and so someone else has done the selling. So I'm just being brought in to see if the chemistry fits. And this is exactly the type of thing that I would do when I'm preparing, as I haven't got that much time. I'm not necessarily going to get the gig anyway, so it's the chemistry call. So I will actually use AI to do a little bit of googling, a little bit of prepping for a few minutes before I jump on that call, so that if I need to ask a question, I can look like I'm at least semi-knowledgeable in their industry just for that moment. So, but typically that's not what they want. They want to know that I've got the right personality, that I'm going to be able to push their teams to do whatever they need them to do and that kind of thing. So it's a bit different for me.
Yeah, because I think you've mentioned it before. I've used it before. I think I haven't used it for a couple of months when I've done stuff, but I use Crystal Nose to work out what kind of disc profile or whichever one of the things that you're using, what is the style and stuff like that. Because, I think that's really important. You don't want to be going with a load of detail for someone who's yellow, I guess, and not really into all of the detail and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So it's good to do a little bit of research about who you're coming across as well. I think it's just, you don't want to do too much. You don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Like you were talking about earlier, you've got to do that time calculation. So for me, this type of thing is brilliant because it's a quick prompt. You can copy paste the prompt and just change the name of the company and the account, or even just the account. And you'll get some quick info, which will be pretty much okay. I know we should always check our AI outputs as well. But I think what's interesting is that the graphic that Jen shares underneath as well, it says in big letters, like 15% of buyers show up very prepared to a first meeting. So that means 85% are not showing up very prepared. And I think it's 57% showing up somewhat prepared. And it can make a real difference for buyers if if you are showing up prepared and know what you're doing right at the beginning. So I think it's a great little post, good little reminder, and with a nice tip in there, Jen, about how to use AI to help with that.
Yeah, I love that. I think the only two things I would mention on it is, if I met someone who said, before we start, I want you to tell me what you already know about my projects, is what we do and who we compete against. That for me would be one of the reasons why I don't want to work with this person. And I'm not saying that I don't want to work with people who are thorough, but that's a bit much for me. And every sales scenario, every meeting with a prospect is about us working out if we're a good fit. So there would be a red flag, there'd be, butterflies in my stomach if I met someone who was that anal on stuff, just because I'm not. I'm more spit on my hand and shake hands and let's try and work together and do something good, rather than super detailed. So that would be the first thing. The other thing I would say is, if you want to supercharge this, try and find out who you could introduce them to. It might be a good introduction for them, and go along with a referral or an introduction. Maybe not a piece of work. That sometimes is a bit difficult. But, if someone came to see me and said, Leon, before we start, thanks for your time. I know you do mobile phones. There's a guy in our office who is in charge of the mobiles, and I think the contract's coming up a few months. Would it be okay if I introduce you? And then started talking to me about something else. I'd be like, I owe this person one. I really want to try and make sure I focus on the conversation. I really want to make sure we have a good chat. I want to make sure that we have a good conversation. I'm going to listen more to the offering that they've got, or how I can help them. So that law of reciprocity is really good as well. So if you are going to use that, if you're going to do research, then, if the research is going to be looking at the website and stuff like that, who do you know who might be a good introduction for them? What about a referral partner? Stuff like that.
Yeah, good shout.
Okay, next post is one that I found, and we do love it. Here's some top tips, because these ones are both short and sweet, but also dead useful for people. So this one's from Sheriff Shahen. He's a senior AE at Deal. We speak about lots of people at Deal all the time, don't we? They're doing some good stuff over there. And he starts with, I guarantee. And if someone says they guarantee, then it's true, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
As soon as someone guarantees that you'll not find a better X, Y, or Z, then you're pretty much said. But he says, if you do these 6 things every day, you'll get yourself a real shot at quota. And it caught my eye because it said a guarantee, and I was ready to rip it apart, because I'm one of them angry people who wants to rip apart on LinkedIn. But he then softens it by saying you'll have a real shot at quota. And I really like that line, because there's no guarantee. You can work hard, you can be diligent, you can do all your research, just sometimes, some months, it just doesn't quite come your way. And then a couple of months later, when you haven't worked as hard and you haven't done all the research, you hit target really easy. This is what sales is, so don't worry about it if that's what you do. But here's his top 6 things to be doing if you want to hit quota. Number 1 is prospect 10 new prospects a day. I think we've all talked about that multiple times, 10 before 10, all that kind of stuff. So find 10 new people you haven't spoken to for at least 6 months. Number 2 is make 10 cold calls a day. Again, it's kind of pretty much the same thing. I guess number 1 is your leads, and number 2 is doing some action on it. Not attempts, but conversations. If your connect rate is trash, fix your list. So yeah, I think we can all get behind that. Send 10 target emails a day. Short, plain text, 1 reason for reaching out. I'm not sure about this just because I'm not a big fan of emails. I keep getting them emails from people who say, hey, I've been on your website and I've seen loads of reasons why you can improve it. Can I have a chat? I'm like, no, shut up, get in the bin. Number 4 is 10 connection requests on LinkedIn a day. Makes sense if you're doing the right ones. Cold calling definitely does work better when your name is an alien. Sometimes I've cold called people after I've added them on LinkedIn and they've said, oh, we've connected on LinkedIn, and you've got a little bit of familiarity there. Just make sure that your posts on LinkedIn aren't rubbish, otherwise they might not like you. Listen to 3 call recordings from top reps a day. Steal their phrasing, tonality, how they shut up after asking questions. 100%. One of the common things I keep talking, having conversations about when I'm doing professional Liverpool stuff right now is around people coming back into work. We met with one of the big legal firms recently, and one of their challenges was about people coming to work. And I was like, the thing that I noticed was one time between COVID 1 and COVID 2, or COVID 2 and COVID 3, I can't remember which episode we were in between. We got all of Your Business Mobile team in a room for some dinner and said, hey, thanks for sticking it out and not dying from COVID over the last couple of months. And a call came in from a client, and Paul said something to Stu, and Stu said so, and between them, in about 3 or 4 minutes, they solved this problem. And they all learn some stuff, and that's really important, that you can learn some stuff, and getting people together and having conversations. It's really missed in this day and age of hybrid working. So if you can possibly get some stuff, because we used to do it all the time, and good and bad, we'd have 40 people on the phones and someone would get away with saying something, or the line would work, and then all of a sudden you start hearing it. You'd see it move across the sales floor as people were getting results from it and stuff like that. And then you'd also see the bad ones where someone says something not right to get get a meeting that you shouldn't have, and the same thing. But yeah, 100%, that learning by osmosis is really good. Sorry, I'm conscious that I've spoken for 15 minutes, Susie. I will give you a chance in a sec. I'll just say the last one, which is send same day follow-ups while the call is fresh, while the pain is vivid. Tomorrow it's already too late. I like most of them. I'm just not into emails, me. So that's a me problem, I guess.
I guess so. I mean, we do speak to a lot of people, don't we, on the podcast, who have a lot of success with emails. And I think there are phases when they do really well and other phases when they don't. And you've got to keep changing it up. Emails, right? If you keep sending the same style of email, it'll get boring at some point. So you've got to keep switching it up, which I'm sure that Sharif is doing. I wanted to jump on the learning through osmosis, because I do believe that that's something that has got more difficult since we've all now started working remotely. Working remotely means that we can do our job from anywhere, which is brilliant, because it means employers have got access to a much bigger community of great salespeople than they may have had before. But it does mean that learning from others has got more difficult. So I love what you're saying there. And I remember when we were working in an office, I used to run the inside sales team, and we would sit in the same office, and there'd be 6 or 7 of us in the office, I think mainly. And we actually had the opportunity there that if we liked the sound of a call that was going on, you could obviously hear the rep speaking anyway, because you could hear them in the room, but you could actually ask their permission, and you could dial in and listen to the whole conversation live, but on complete mute, so that nobody knew you were there. And it was a really good way of learning, because you could dial into an objection handling, you could dial into a product demo, depending on what it was that you wanted to learn from. And it was just really cool. And I think we now have to be more, it doesn't mean we can't do it, but it means we just need to be more purposeful about it and build it into our learning and our development. So managers, if you're out there, if you've got an opportunity to be sharing recordings, team members, if you've got a mate that you could make some kind of game around sharing recordings, I think it's a great shout. I love that one. The other one, I mean, I agree with most of these. Again, the 10 new prospects a day. And what I like there is you've kind of qualified it by saying they're older than 6 months, because I think sometimes we can forget these people on our lists, and we tried to contact them a few times. They never answered, so we kind of gave up. Try again. Maybe there's a new partner, maybe there's a new person at the end, in that role now. Maybe you just happen to ring at the bad times, and now they're a lot more free to talk. So going back over old lists that are about 6 months old, I think is a great shout as well. So I just wanted to pull up on that one.
Love it, love it, love it. So we've got one last post, and it's from Ryan Hulse. So Ryan's tagline on LinkedIn says, "Picking up the phone and having genuine conversations with your ideal clients," which sounds great to me. I wish someone would do more of that for me, I'll be honest with you. Ryan says, "Here's one of the biggest lessons I've learned on cold calling over the years. You have to understand who you are calling and why. So basic, but business get this wrong. Let me explain. I'm not talking about super specific and personalized researching your customers to death so that you know what their dog's name is. I'm talking about understanding their needs and your offering. The cliche of saying if you serve everyone, you serve no one is true. A 5 ICP client, ICP being ideal client profile client, avatar approach in cold calling is probably going to give you rubbish results. Focus on one industry to call into, one type of company, and understand who the relevant person in the company is. Volume is key. So make sure the pool is big enough. I'm not saying niche down your business. I'm saying to focus your cold calling efforts. How do you know who to focus on if your client base is so varied? Pull a list of your previous current clients and look for common denominators. If you still can't decide, ask yourself what type of client or work you want more of. But how do you really know the problem you fix is big enough for your ideal client's world? Speak with your clients. Ask them what the problem you've helped them fix is and how things are different now. What's happening in their business when they realize you need help? Get their perspective. It's probably different from what you think. And I love this for a couple of reasons. One, Ryan and I have had loads of conversations personally about this kind of stuff whilst he's been doing his cold call and stuff over the last few years, because I've caught up with him loads. Two, one of the things that I often hear marketing people will say is niche. You got a niche, you should do this niche. And our American cousins will say the riches are in the niches. But people often get that wrong because they think that niching is about like just selling to one type of thing, but actually it's in your marketing and doing it relevant to them at different stages. So, you should have some marketing, you should have some calls that happen for logistic companies, but then you'd have another one that would happen for charities and third sector businesses. And I've noticed this myself recently. So for the mobile business, we've got a few different niches, if you like, that we work really well in different types of businesses, and they're on our website. So you can see if you look on the website, you can see the different ones. And I would often be very general in the stuff that I was talking about when I was going to networking events or BNI or that kind of stuff, referral marketing stuff. And I got some real success from a third sector business that we helped recently. And I thought the reason for the success was because of something that I'd done, was something I'd done, but something I thought was over here. But when I spoke to them, they told me about all this other stuff that I hadn't even thought about and took for granted. So what I did was I started talking about that stuff to others. And a couple of days later, someone who was in one of them rooms rang me and said, "Look, I'm just with one of my clients who fits the profile of what you were talking about. And when I mentioned the challenges that you mentioned, they said they've got them. Can I connect you?" I went, "Yeah, of course you can. What's the scenario?" They've got 200 on phones. And just by making sure that I was having the right conversations about the right relevant things to them ICPs really helped people to help me and get me some more clients.
I love that. Yeah.
And I've managed to do lots of that. So the reason I'm sharing it is because I like the conversation and talking about this kind of stuff. But one of the key things was like asking your customers why they bought off you, because it won't be why you think they bought off you.
Such a good tip. And I think it's great, especially if you're starting out in a new company, call some happy customers and find out about it. And I think what you just said about referrals, if you have a business or if your business relies a lot on referrals, the more specific you can be to the people you're asking to make referrals to, the better. So exactly what you said there, like I'm looking to work with people in the education sector, schools from ages 5 to 18 with no more than 500 pupils and no more than 50 teachers. Like, be very specific about what it is that you're targeting, then people know that when they come across them, they can refer you. I think it's a great point. I guess the thing I wanted to jump on is he talks about contacting the same type of business profile.
Yep.
So I think, first of all, that's good for time effectiveness reasons, but also it means that you can get your storytelling really well done as well. So if you've got one or two really good stories about how you've helped a customer in that particular area, and you have that practiced, and you're making calls to hospitals all day, guess what? You can reel out that story a few times and you have it practiced, and it sounds better each time you tell it. How you've helped a previous hospital do this or achieve this or get these savings or improve patient mortality rates or whatever it might be, right? So that can be something that can really help. Can you tell that I've been working with lots of people who sell to the public sector today? Yes, just talked about schools and hospitals. Yeah, so I think that's something as well, is, being effective with your time can also make you effective with your patter, with your stories and everything that you've got with there. So that was all I wanted to add. I think it's a great post.
Yeah, because we've done obviously work with SIA, and we're talking about, doing that the double point and then the push away. So you'd say, Susie, I speak with lots of female sales traders who tell me they've got challenges around their orange jacket, and others tell me they've got a bit of a problem with their headsets right now, but I guess that's not a problem for you. So if you are doing that and you're keeping it specific to the industry, you can then really drill into that and get really good at it and sound really good. It's like if you start your cold call and your first 10 are crap, your next 10 aren't so crap, and then the ones after that are really good. If you keep jumping from different industry and different sectors and different points that you're making, it's harder to really get into your flow and really get going. So I love the idea as well of that, Susie. Thanks for sharing. I'm going to try and get us a theme, Susie.
You're not.
I am. But our first post from Joanna was about not selling ice to the Eskimos and not trying to get people to say yes, and instead trying to find the right kind of clients for you and if you were a good fit. The second post that we shared was from Jen, was about doing your research and making sure that if you do your research, you have some good conversations with them clients. The third one was how to get better at prospecting and do more prospecting. And then the fourth one from Ryan was about getting really good at prospecting. So our theme today, I'm going to say, is having a process around your approach to prospecting. How are you feeling about that, Susie?
I will accept that.
Thanks very much.
You've done well.
Guys, if you want to find out some more about Susie, check it out on LinkedIn or check out thesmallstuff.de. Chris and I are both on LinkedIn a fair bit as well. Chris is at sixdoor.com, and you can also find out some more about the Sales Dojo at www.thesalesdojo.com. Twiz is on YouTube now, so if you want to see our ugly mushes, please do reach out. And then the last one is, if you see a really good post, if you see something that you think the sales community should be listening to, if you think there's something that we could dissect, please drop us an email at improve@thesalesdojo.com, and we'll have a look and we'll give you a shout out. Speak to you soon.
Ta-da!